kids, today I will be bringing you guys my updated Legend World Star deck profile. I've been meaning to update this for a while, but so many good decks came out that I wanted to test out and everything, and all at the same time, so it took me a little while to get this. I'm sorry about that. But this is the Zodiac build. This isn't using Great Fate or anything, so it's purely like Zodiac control slash, well, yeah, Zodiac can't rush, but yeah, Zodiac control. So, of course, flag is Legend World, and the buddy is Leo Star Sentinel Leon, and we'll get into him in a minute, but first, let's get into the boss monster of the deck. You run 4 copies of Star Deity Dragon Zodiac. His call cost is pay 2 gauge, and put a card from your drop zone into his soul. So he really helps you get like a specific, some of the specific Drago arms you run in this, that, you know, the dual world Drago arms, into his soul to get their abilities and everything. So he's a really good card. 7/2/5, and of course he has the Gravity Rest ability. So whenever a monster enters your opponent's field, you can pay a gauge, discard a card to rest it. And that's, of course, not once per turn, and so as much gauge as you have and as many cards as you have in your hand, you can keep resting their cards as long as you're forcing them to call cards every turn. And his other abilities are, he has 2 abilities. One activates if your flag is Legend World, and the other one activates if your flag is Star Dragon World. The Legend World ability is he gets Penetrate and gives all your star monsters on the field power plus 3,000. So he turns your small, puny little size 0 star monsters into like at least like 4 to 7k beaters, and that's really useful to help get over those walls. And giving himself Penetrate really helps against your matchups like Shadow Shades and any Legend World build. Any Ancient World build that isn't Raging Spirits. And his other ability, even though this is a Legend World deck, can come in handy. If your flag is Star Dragon World, he gets Move, and all of your Neo Dragons on your field get Penetrate. Right, no, an extra crit, sorry. An extra crit. So that was only useful in this deck just because you run a nifty little spell called Future Astrology, and it has 2 effects. But we'll get into that later. You might use that at some point if you just need that extra critical just to finish your opponent off, to penetrate for 3. But that's 4 copies of that guy. And then the backup boss of the deck is run 4 copies of Hollowed Arms Zodiac. He has the Gravity Rest ability also. You know, whenever a monster enters your opponent's field, you can pay a gauge, discard a card, and rest it. His stats are 7/2/5 also, so exact same stats. And of course he has Soul Guard, but he gets when he enters the field, he gets the top card of the deck into the soul. So he's not quite as good as this guy because it's a random card in soul, whereas this guy you can really abuse some of the other cards in this deck by just fishing it out of drop. And his secondary ability isn't as good either. I mean, it's okay. If your flag's Legend World, when it attacks, you can pay a life to return a monster on your opponent's field to their hand. And if your flag's Star Dragon World, you can pay a life to destroy a monster on their field. So if you use Future Astrology to make your flag count as both during that turn, you know, you can pay 2 life and like potentially like you can declare bouncing first and then destruction and basically pop it twice like that. But you never really want to do that. You're already paying a good bit of life in this deck. But you mainly just use him because he's sitting on good stats, and he's not, he doesn't cost you a card out of your hand like the other one that takes gauge away from your opponent does. So in my opinion, he's just the one I like as the backup, but you mainly want to go into this guy. So now we're going to go into the buddy of the deck. That is 4 copies of Leo Star Sentinel Leon. He is a 4/1/1, and his ability is if your buddy is a star, he becomes a size 0. So you can call him out with your Zodiacs on the field and everything. So with Star Deity Zodiac, he becomes a 7k, so that's really good. Nice mini beater, you know, who doesn't like a size 0 that can swing for 7k. But this card is MVP because his other ability is a counter speed ability, where you can, as long as you have another star on your field, you can, at counter speed, put him in the drop and gauge the top 2 cards of your deck. So he's your gauge engine of the deck. The deck does use a lot of gauge, and it's kind of just really tight on space too. I wanted to work in some more gauge excel into this, but you honestly just don't have the space. So he's really good, and you can keep fishing him out with this dude. Freaking Merlin looking guy. This is Capricorn Star Sentinel Capricorno, I believe it's pronounced. He is a 1/1, a 1/1/2. I almost said 1/1/1. A 1/1/2, and he costs a gauge to call out. But when he enters the field, you can call a size 2 or less monster, a size 2 or less star monster from your drop zone by paying its call cost. And this ability only activates once per turn. It is a name ability, so you can't really spam it in one turn. So basically, you just use him to get any of your zeros out. You know, you can pay gauge, get this guy out, use its ability to revive this guy, swing and everything, and then at the end of your turn, or during your opponent's turn, just counter speed, put this guy in the drop, get 2 gauge. So you got an extra attacker, so you plussed, and then you got the gauge back you paid for this guy, plus an extra gauge. So it's a nice little combo, and there's also a card I run in this deck that can revive this guy, so you revive him, and then get back. We'll get in all the combos later. Next, moving on with more size zeros, move on to my favorite card in Legend World, All-Knowing Aladal. Now, Aladal is, the stats don't matter. It's a 3/1/1, so it's not bad. It's a hero, it's not a star, but you just run it for its discard ability. When Aladal's discarded, you gauge 1, draw 1. So you have Zodiac on the field, they call something, you want to gravity rest it, you pay the gauge, discard an Aladal. Aladal's skill triggers, you draw a card, get the gauge back. So you basically get gravity rest for free and helps you dig out all your combo pieces. Just an amazing card. I definitely recommend running it at 4 in almost any Legend World deck, really. Just an amazing card. Next, I run 2 copies of Ares Star Sentinel, I can't even see the little name, Ares? I think it's just spelled different. Ares. This card is, I recommend also like sideboarding 1 to 2 more, because the biggest weakness of this deck is item heavy decks, because besides this card, you really don't have a way to counter items. So when this guy is, he's a 2/1/1. When he's discarded from your hand, you can pay gauge. If you do, you destroy an item or a spell in your opponent's field. So that's the big problem with this deck. Anything that really relies on like a big weapon, like a Danger World or like Hero World transforming into stuff. There's nothing this deck can really do against that. So this guy just really helps out in that regard. You gravity rest the monster when they call it by discarding this, and then pay an extra gauge to also pop their item. It'd be really devastating. Really devastating. Just helps with coverage and like the bad matchups of the deck, really. Next, run 2 copies of Meteor Arms Pisca Pisca. This is a really simple card. It's a 3/1/1, and you just run it for gauge excel, really. And the fact that it's a Legend and Star Dragon World, so it helps with your future astrology plays. But when he's put in the soul of a Neo Dragon, you just gauge the top part of your deck. So if you want to get one of the gauge back you paid for one of your Zodiacs, and like when you call this guy out, you just put this guy in soul and get one of the gauges back. So it's nice that way. Or if you just want extra soul, you have it in your hand, you call it out, and just you want to help keep your Zodiac around, you can go ahead and cross knives, because Zodiac is, you know, a star and a Neo Dragon. And you can also call this guy out with your Capricorna. So it just gets you extra soul and buffs you up by a gauge. So it's a good card. Next, we run 4 copies of this Dragon Arms. It's Meteor Arms Nebuloso. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Its call cost is a gauge, and it is a 3/1/1, size 0. But when it's in the soul of a Neo Dragon, after the battle that Neo Dragon attacks, it gets double attack. So if it's in the soul of your Zodiac and you attack, you just restand and get another attack. So it's really good. It really helps you put that offensive pressure on your opponent. It's really just the best way for the deck, because the deck has a lot of defense that can stall out, but a lot of times if you don't draw into this card, you just lack the offense to finish your opponent off. So that's what it's there for, and of course you can always get it back with this guy, and that's a really gauge heavy play, because the gauge for him, you still have to pay the gauge for that, and then cross 9s. So that's 2 gauge, but if it's going to win you the game, it's worth it. And then again, like always, like extra soul. And if it's in your drop, of course, you can, when you call out your Zodiac, you just put it straight in soul, and your Zodiac automatically has double attack right there. So, great card. That's it for the monsters. Next, moving on to the spells, run 4 copies of Future Astrology. I have 2 of each artwork, just because that's how it turned out. Now, this card's really awesome. You may only cast it if you have... no. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. It has 2 abilities. When you cast this, you choose one of the 2. You may either pay a gauge, and if there's a star on your field, you draw a card, and then if there's a Neo Dragon on your field, you draw another card. So you want to have one of your Zodiacs on the board, because that's a draw 2 instantly because they're dual world, or one of your 6 meteor arms on the field, and you just draw 2. It's not life restricted, so that's really nice. And it also has the second ability, where it's just counter speed. For this turn, your flag counts as Legend and Star Dragon World. So that can help unlock both your Zodiac's abilities for the turn, and that's counter speed. You don't have to pay a gauge for that ability. Next, run 2 copies of Brilliance of the Yellow Path. This card's really nice for also applying pressure. Like I said, sometimes it's hard for you to finish your opponent off. You can stall the game out for as long as you can, but you just don't quite have that push. You can't push in for that extra damage. This spell really helps. Its cast cost is pay gauge and a life, and it sets on your field, so it just stays there. And all-star monsters on your field get an extra crit, and you can only have 1 copy of it on the field at a time, and that's why I only run it at 2, because yeah, you want to draw into it, but you don't want to see it too much. And with the Future Astrologies and the All-It-Alls discarding, the deck has a decent enough draw power to where you can draw into it, and once you have one on the field, the other one's dead in your hand. And also, the gauge and the life is kind of costly, so if your opponent goes out of their way to destroy this, you don't really always want to pay the life to put the second one out, unless it's going to be game deciding. If you're going up against a deck where you know they can pop your set spells, you can just wait to cast this the turn that you think you're going to finish them off. Next, we're going to get into some of the defensive spells of the deck. Run 4 copies of Divine Guidance. This is the best and also the worst shield for this deck, because you can only cast it if you have a Zodiac on your field. So if you're going up against a deck like 5th Omni or something like that, and they can just sit 5th Omni or 72 Pillars, and they can just sit there and pop your Zodiac before they enter battle, then this card's dead, just completely useless. But otherwise, it's just a really good shield. It's basically Sun Dragon shield. If you have a Zodiac on your field, you can cast this during an attack on your opponent's turn, nullify the attack, you gain a gauge, and gain a life. So, life gain's nice, because you do pay some life in this deck, and you pay a lot of gauge in this deck. So, next, I run 3 copies of Scorn of Gremlin. It's just the Solomon Shield clone. It can nullify any attack as long as it's not a link attack. So again, like Divine Guidance has that stipulation where you have to have the Zodiac on the board. So you want to run a shield that can protect Zodiac or stop attacks if they destroy it. So you can't run Holy Grail in this deck because you're always going to have the Zodiac in the center. And I'm not a fan of Medusa Shield, only for the fact that it costs a gauge and the deck is already really gauge heavy. Next, this is kind of like a pseudo shield, kind of. This is Illusion of the Void Deity. At counter speed, you can cast this card if a size 3 choose a size 3 monster on your field. The next time that monster would leave would be destroyed, you gain a life and it remains on the field. So it doesn't stop penetrate, but it keeps your monster around and you gain life. So it can help keep your Zodiac around. It's mainly there for like the counter destruction spells, or you're going up against 5th Omni and you just need to protect it, or like, you know, life gain's nice too, again. And speaking of paying life, now we're getting into the cards, the spells that require you to pay life. This is Uninvited Deity Inspector. This is your search spell for Zodiac. Cast cost, pay 2 life. Call up to 1 monster with Zodiac in its name from your deck by paying its call cost and shuffle your deck. So this just is basically 2 extra copies of whichever Zodiac you want to call out, which again will pretty much always be this guy. So it's just basically you're running 6 copies of this guy in your deck because you have to have a Zodiac on your field for this deck to function right. I would like to run a 3rd copy, but you kind of, again, like, deck space is really tight. I could always cut like a size 0 somewhere in the deck, or maybe a copy of another spell for a 3rd copy of it. But again, like, you're already running 8 Zodiacs, so this gives you 10 basically. So you're usually going to see one. Next, run 3 copies of just a very welcome card to Legend World. Well, it's a dual world card, Darkness Dragon World and Legend World. It is Darkness Rune. Its cast cost is pay a life, and counter speed. Choose one of the following effects, and out of the 3 and use it. The first one is put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge. So it's just a gauge excel that costs a life. Or you can destroy a size 1 or lower monster on your opponent's field. Or you can remove a soul from a card on your opponent's field. So you can remove something pesky in the soul, and if you're trying to get over something, or if there's something in the soul that's given their monster or their spell an effect, you can get rid of that. Or if you just need some gauge, or counter destruction is really great too. So it's just a very versatile card, and having this in the deck really keeps you from having to run other cards. So if you can ever combine like 2 or 3 different things in one card, it makes that card really strong. And rounding out the deck, we run 2 copies of Starfall Knight. Now this is like an older card, and its ability is, well, you can only cast it during your opponent's turn. So you usually want to wait until your opponent declares, they declare in a battle, and you can cast this and put something in the center to help protect yourself. But you're usually going to wait till they end their turn, and right before they end their turn, you cast this. Get one of your size 0s out, like a Capricorno. Where's the that? Yeah, this guy right here, and then get another size 0 out. And you have to pay the call cost, so you still have to pay the gauge for Capricorno, but it's still really good. It basically gives you 6 copies of him, and it allows you to keep reviving your Dragon Arms that you want to keep putting in Soul to keep giving you gauge, or keep giving you double attack, or just keep reviving Leo just to keep getting gauge. But that's the deck, guys. Let me know what you think. It's just my take on it. There's a bunch of different possible builds. I'm choosing not to run any items right now, and I know there's a couple other Zodiacs that are that are okay. But Legend World has a lot of options right now. I love that about it, and I'm just really excited to see what cards we keep getting. But if any questions, just leave them in the comments, and please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and stay tuned for more Vanguard and Legend